Hello, and thank you for listening to Voice of Uganda Radio. I am your host, Miss Brenda, for the next 2 hours of Freedom at Hand. So, whatever your time zone is, wherever you may be, thank you so much for being a part of the program today and welcome aboard. I'm getting out of the habit of saying good morning, even though it's early here where I'm at, because I know that some of you have already started your day, and for some of you, your day is almost over. So, we appreciate the growth and we appreciate you wherever you may be in whatever time zone you may be. It's always good to have that feeling of knowing that because, we're not just localized. We want to reach out to Ugandans everywhere, wherever they may be. So when the decision came for satellite radio, we felt like, that was the way to reach the biggest volume of people. And then now, as you know, we talk more about, not satellite, but internet radio. Now we talk more about satellite radio because we've got another group of a wave of people that we need to reach. So our growth is very much appreciated, and we thank you so much for always being a part of the program and always being a part of Voice Uganda Radio. It's been an interesting weekend here on Voice Uganda Radio. Saturday was a really good day with lots of conversation back and forth. A lot of people sharing their opinions on how they felt about different things. And, it warms my heart to see that because it shows us that everyone is participating in and taking part in how we move forward from here. The dialogue has started on the outside of the country, but eventually it will make it into the walls of Uganda and we can have the conversation on a broader platform. So I'm very, very thankful for all the callers and for all the listeners and for all the ways in which you participate and all the ways in which you give us feedback as to how you're feeling about topics of conversation too. Because the great thing is, it's like we said in the very beginning, we don't have all the answers to everything, but it's nice to know how our listeners feel, how they view what we're saying, and it kind of opens us all up to grow a little bit more and to change our mindset. So thank you so much, all of you, as our listening audience here in the United States of America, our American listening audience, and throughout the global world, everywhere that you might be. So thank you so much. Again, thank you for the memberships that we have there in FADU. FADU continues to grow. In 2013, it grew it grew a lot, but in 2014, we want to see those numbers grow even more as we start to engage the United States of America through Congress and through the government to help us project ourselves forward in the way in which we want to here for the people of Uganda through FADU. So thank you so much for your membership there. And like I said, you go out to FADU, click on the registration tab, put in your information. It will send a confirmation back to your email that will, when you open that up, it will say, congratulations, you've registered for FADU. Just remember that second part there. Once you go out there and register, it hasn't fully registered you until you go and open up the email. And for some of you, it may go into your spam or your junk mail. So make sure you go right out there and look for it. Click on that, and then it will tell you congratulations that you're a member. So we continue to want you to go out there and participate and be a part of that. Like Charlie and so many others said on their programs yesterday, 2014 is going to be a great year for Voice Uganda Radio and FADU. We set a lot of goals for ourselves, and the only way that we're going to reach a lot of those goals is not just through us who are here working effortlessly, putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours to bring these programs to you, and then all of the things that we're doing behind the scene that you're not aware of. We need your participation as well, whether it be through giving or wanting to be a part of a program or just calling in. We thank you so, so very much for that. If they haven't already changed our lineup for 2014, you're going to see a lot of the programs change a little bit in their time slots. We tried to move everything into a 2-hour time slot because we felt like it would be better time served for everyone. And also some of the people that were on the platform, you'll see their names come off. We enjoyed and loved having Anna Adek be a part of Freedom at Hand on Sundays. for the time that she was with us, and that was a part of the reason we changed the program to an earlier hour. But being in Uganda, the stresses of Uganda, the pressure that people are going under with trying to come out and trying to make a difference, we understand that we may only have those people or those audiences for a small period of time. But for whatever time anyone decides to give to Voice of Uganda Radio, I think we've all been blessed, and we can all move forward from what we've learned and shared from those people. So we thank them, and we continue to thank those of you who will be a part of the programs in this coming year. Yeah, here on Freedom at Hand today, I want to talk about. Well, let's look at this point for just a second. When fear becomes your way of life and the way you live, you cannot imagine your life without it. Fear is a very crippling thing, and we don't realize that because we don't understand the impact that it has on our lives. But when fear becomes your way of life or the way you live, you can't imagine your life in any other way. So Freedom at Hand today is about freeing of the minds, the body, the soul, and spirit of the Ugandan people. Because we cannot move forward in a free society and in a free world for the Ugandan people until we start to help them to understand that the freeing of their minds has to take a large part in moving the country forward, moving the people forward, moving the communities forward. Because when we say freeing of the mind, we're not thinking globally overall through the geographical scale of Uganda, but we're talking one person at a time. One community at a time, one group at a time, because what will happen is it becomes very, very contagious as that takes off. We're going to talk about that in the freeing of minds from people in South Africa, for the freeing of minds in the United States of America, and for freeing of minds in India when we all had to overcome certain things that were going on in our own lives at particular times throughout history. And even with the freeing of our minds, not even talking about those who are Ugandans, but those who are outside of the country through their own struggles, really what they had to go through in order to get to the next place. We share here a lot on Freedom at Hand for the Ugandan people, a lot of historical people who have made a difference in life, who have moved forward and made a difference in a great way, contributing to the growth of a nation. These same things can happen in Uganda, but one of the things that has to happen is in our mind, we have to get our mind set on where we want our hearts to go. Because when we set our minds, the heart will follow. And we need to start thinking in terms of that as far as the Ugandan people, because we've talked about it time and time again, the fear that lives in the heart of the Ugandan people. I had the opportunity to listen to some of Charlie's show yesterday, and a lot of the dialogue that went back and forth in that on Focus on Uganda. It was very interesting to me because I still sense a lot of fear in a lot of the conversation and what people were talking about and what people were sharing. Still wanting to separate ourselves out and be our own, but, still the fear of change was there, because whenever there's fear, there's an unknown in that, and we don't know how to move forward. We don't know how to project ourselves forward out of that. And just like the people of the United States, just like the people of South Africa, just like the people of India, just like the slaves here in America in the 1800s, the people of Uganda will rise. As the sun rises each and every day, the people of Uganda will rise also. And if for no other reason here on Freedom at Hand, other than to give you a little bit more to drive you forward, then that's what, I hope to do here. Because one of the things we have to understand is that we're more afraid of the light than we are the darkness. Way, way more afraid. You hear a lot of people say, I'm afraid of the dark, but I think we're afraid of the light way more than the darkness. And the reason I say that is this. When daylight comes, it exposes a lot of things. It exposes the trueness of who people are. It exposes the trueness of what we are facing. And we have to face it head on. And we have to face it looking it in the eye. We can't face it on the shoulders of those around us. Sometimes we have to come in contact with our own truth and our own belief of how we feel about the situations that we're in and what we're going to do in those situations to make a change in our own lives. Because when we become accustomed to the way in which we're treated, it's a way of life for us. And when I say that, whether you live in an abusive situation or alcoholic or abusive home or situations where you're abused or beaten, any dysfunction in the family, or even in cases of isolation, what we become accustomed to is how we live our lives. And we, time and time again, history has shown through a lot of psychological evaluations that, let's say, for instance, children who have grown up in alcoholic homes, there is an abuse that happens there, verbally, physically, and mentally. And when those children who grow up in that environment, when they go out into the world, they look for people that validate those feelings within themselves. They don't look for people to validate how it feels to be loved, how it feels to be cared about, how it feels to be nurtured, how it feels to be whole, because they don't know what that feels like. So they don't go out looking for that. We look for what we're familiar with, not for the unfamiliar, but the familiar, which is why dysfunctional behaviors continue throughout history and in life, because it becomes a way in which people are accustomed to. Now, I say that to say this for the Ugandan people. For 27 years, we had one sitting president. So for 27 years, that is a lot of history. If you think about it, most people who are born into a family, by 23 to 25, you're out of the family and on your own. The structure of who you are has been built up. Your characteristics, your personality, everything about you has been made and formed. So we know in the small frame of life from birth to about, you're 23 to 25, we have become who we are going to become. So in looking back at that, you have to think about the youth in Uganda, that for 27 years, this is the dictatorship that they've known, and this is all that they have known. And if nothing different has been taught in the family as a structure and a way to move forward, then this is what they know. These are the behavior traits that they show, and this is how they move forward in life. It's all that they know. And at some point in time, we have to change the history and we have to change the pattern of that. Now, those of us who are adults and way into our 40s and late 30s, 40s, 50s, some of you in your 60s and even your 70s, we had a different way of viewing life and seeing life because you have not been born into this dictatorship. You have lived your life with some understanding of true democracy and the way life works and the way in which you are able to move forward. So to a certain degree, parts of you are very, very healthy. But then there are other parts of you that are not healthy simply because of the anxiety you experience because of the wars that have happened there in Uganda, the treatment of your neighbors, the treatment of other people, the treatment of other tribes under one war after another, because we all know that leadership in Uganda has never changed hands in any other way other than by force. So there are those of you who have lived through the agony and the pain of those things as well. There are those of you who have lost family members, and other atrocities and things have happened to you because you lived in that time period. So there is a lot of hurt and frustration that's there. So when I say that fear becomes a way of life, it's not only for the youth that were born in Uganda and born into what they are experiencing now, and the fear that continues to haunt them on a daily basis through what the government is doing to the youth there in Uganda, but it is also a way of life for those of you who are past that, who have lived through some of the other atrocities that have happened to the country as well. So one of the things I want the Ugandan people to understand, and the reason I'm going in this direction, is because unless we get to a point where we can start to see our lives differently and we can move past the fear into a freedom state of mind, into gathering ourselves back up into wholeness, we're going to be trapped there. And there's no way we're going to be able to move the people of Uganda forward if there is a fear and a trust issue that lies at the forefront of everything that we're trying to break through. An example, when President Lincoln, we talked about him once here on Freedom at Hand, when he was fighting through the Civil War for the freedom of which he knew had to happen in the United States of America in order for the United States of America to move forward. When he fought to free the blacks from slavery, there was an uncertainty in that. He did not know what would happen. He did not know the benefits of what would happen to blacks who were considered Negroes at the time, but he did not know what would happen to them. He could not make promises as to how their lives would be. He could not tell them how they would be able to move forward and how things were going to be great for them, because there was a lot of uncertainty. The only thing certain with President Lincoln at the time, when he knew that we had to fight for the freedom of slavery to be abolished in the United States of America, because it was the only way for the United States of America to move forward, there was a lot of uncertainty. But we trusted in the fact that if we fought for our freedom, we would deal with the consequences of what would come later. But the first thing that had to happen was we had to get on board to say, yes, there should be a freedom and an equality for all. And that was one of the things that we stood on. For the people of Uganda, I think the fear of the uncertainty of what happens when we all unite and start fighting against the government for true leadership. One of the things that is paralyzing, as it was also in the United States of America when slaves were fighting for their freedom, that slavery should be abolished, we did not know what would happen after that took place, but we knew it had to take place. In Uganda, in the walls of Uganda right now, and those of you who live in the diaspora, one of the things we can all stand on and know needs to happen is there needs to be change in Uganda. That the Uganda that we love and that we know and that we're fighting for her freedom is not the Uganda of today. And we have to fight for those freedoms. We cannot get hung up in what happens next. Because in the what happens next, we start to all get stuck. And that's where the fighting and that's where the bickering comes in. We talked about I talked about here, I think it was on the American Connection, we talked about the fact that there's been 140 groups to form since this president has been in office. Over the 27 years, there's been 140 groups to come up. And of those 140 groups, basically all of them have dissipated or disappeared. Because unless we start to deal with the underlying issues, we can never deal with the things on the surface that we all see. Because in our hearts, that's the underlying issues, is where do we all stand heart to heart? Not mind to mind, not ego to ego, not shoulder to shoulder, not fist to fist, but where do we all stand on a separate platforms within our hearts and in our convictions? In our hearts and in our convictions, there has to be an underlying area of compassion. And in that compassion, we learn to see and understand and embrace everyone who is a part of the struggle. Not just ourselves, not just our tribal aspects, not just our areas of origin within the global geographical map of Uganda itself. We've got to start having compassion for everyone in Uganda and not just compassion for our group of people and how we feel, because you're never going to teach other people how to have compassion for you if you don't start to embrace those people and teach them of your hurts, of your pains, of your struggles, of your fears. And we have to face those fears, because if we don't face those fears, then we'll never be able to connect up and move forward from there. Let's go back to President Lincoln and in the 1800s for the fights for civil rights, for freedom from slavery for coloreds in the United States of America. The coloreds, who we were called Negroes at the time, there was a fear even in that community. The fear that we faced in slavery was that even though we were all slaves, there were different treatments of slaves. So some slaves, their masters loved them and taught them to read and taught them to write and taught them currency and taught them money and engaged them in conversations about life. So those slaves had an advantage over other slaves where all they were slaves and they were never taught anything. They were beaten into submission and that's all they knew. They didn't know anything outside of that. So in a free world, now you're thinking we're fighting for freedom, but some of us are a little more freer than others, even though we were all slaves. Slavery, there were slaves that worked in the fields, and that's all they knew were agriculture and gardening. That's all they knew. They didn't understand the economic side of what they were doing. There were slaves who were called house slaves, and they only worked on the inside. So they understood luxury, they understood clothes, they understood materials, they understood foods, they understood how you set a table, how you present a table, they understood entertaining. They were able to be parts of conversations that were taking place through their masters because they had to stand there in obedience to serve coffee or to serve cookies or to serve whatever the guest might need during a lot of these conversations. So as you can see, there was an unbalance in it. The fact that even in slavery, the worst thing that ever happened in the United States of America, a lot of people never really go back in to study the fact that there were, even though everyone was considered slaves, there were some that were put on different levels of their learning. So in freedom, they would understand things that others would not understand. The same thing is true in Uganda today. We have those of you in the diaspora, we will call you the house slaves because what you have learned through true democracy, the way a government works, how a people are moved forward, how to have the conversations, you have grown at a level that those in Uganda have not grown at. They have been like the slaves in the field, so to speak, in the 1800s here in the United States of America. They are not privileged to a lot of the information that you have on the outside. They are not privileged to true democracy in the way that it works. And some of you have gotten some of the best education that money can buy. And some of you are in positions of great, great leadership, and you know what will be needed in order to move Uganda forward. But this is where the problem lies. Like it did here in the United States of America when President Lincoln fought in the Civil War to free slaves. There is an imbalance that's going to take place because when everyone is free, they are not going to understand and they're not going to know what others do. So they have to trust in those who have the knowledge. They have to trust in those who have been educated. They have to trust in those who have been elevated to a level higher than their own, that they will work for all slaves. They will work on the behalf of all blacks, all Negroes, as we were called then, because we all had to move forward, not just a group of us, not just one or two of us, but just like President Lincoln understood that in freeing the slaves, it would make America, the United States of America, a better place for all. So did those who were freed. Then their job was to understand that the only way to project and move us forward as a nation, as a country of Negroes who became colored people, who became African Americans. They knew that we had to unite in some way or form in order to be able to move forward. So let's go back into the walls of Uganda, as I have broken down to help you understand, those of you who are in the diaspora and those of you who are indeed in still in the walls of Uganda. We understand and we see things a lot differently now than you did when you lived in Uganda, and the stories that you've heard and that you've been told. Even if you look at Charlie and his people and the atrocities and the things that happened to them, He understands and he knows now that in order for Uganda to move forward, there has to be a uniting of all the people of Uganda. The people of the blacks in the United States of America would have never grown to be as strong as they are if they did not at some point have a trust that we were out for the interests and the goods of all, and that we were all equal in the eyes of each other. Now, there was bitterness, there was hurt, there was discrimination, there was a lot. It wasn't a bed of roses. So I don't want to paint a picture like there wasn't problems. But we have to look at the underlying issue, which I said in the very beginning. We have to look at our heart. And we have to, in our heart, we have to stand on that and figure out where we are emotionally and physically as far as the country as a whole, from the heart of how we feel and how we view things. When the wars went on, we talked about the 54th Regiment of Massachusetts. And the 54th Regiment was a group of nothing but African Americans fighting in a war that did not even recognize them as being able to die alongside whites. This is how the hatred in this country was, that the 54th Regiment went forward to fight side by side with whites who did not want them in that war, did not feel like they had or deserved the right to carry a gun or to shoot or kill another white man. Yet something had to be done, and everybody knew that something had to be done. And eventually the whites would fall in large numbers if they did not start to recruit from the blacks. And the blacks had a heart of compassion for this, because this is the unknown that we're talking about. In the hearts of the 54th Regiment, all they knew is that they had to fight for freedom and justice for all. And if they had one man who was President Lincoln, that was willing to stand and say, we have to do this and we have to move forward, because he fought from an intellectual place. He had to fight Congress. The 54th Regiment had to fight from the heart of knowing that some of them were slaves themselves and some of them were free. Even the whites who were in the war fought from even a different place. They fought from the mindset of these people are not equal. They do not deserve the right to stand side by side with us and fight on this battlefield, which is why you had just an all-black regiment. But even though they were fighting the enemy, the whites in the Civil War, even though they were fighting against the North and the South, which were whites, they felt like they had every right to kill a white man, but they didn't feel like the blacks had the right to kill a white man, even though they were losing a war and a battle that President Lincoln so wanted us to win, to free slavery. So as you can see, there was a lot of turmoil, just like there's a lot of turmoil in Uganda right now about who has the rights to what, who can do what, who can stand on what platform and who can't, who has rights to more in the country than others who don't. I mean, you can start to parallel and see the conflict that we experienced in the United States of America in the 1800s and what is happening today in Uganda as we start to move forward. But just like President Lincoln understood and knew, something had to happen in order for there to be great change. And I tell you, my fellow Ugandans, the United States of America would not be the powerhouse that it is today if that did not happen. That had to happen in order for us to move forward into where we are today. In Uganda, in FADU, the Federal Alliance for Democracy and Development in Uganda, we cannot give you all the answers to the new Uganda. We cannot give you the answer to how it will all play out in the end. We cannot comfort you in what will happen after after regime change takes place. But what we can assure you of is that nothing will happen until that happens. The country will not be able to move forward until that happens. And we give the country back to its people, which is the Ugandans, who are living and breathing and surviving on the floor of Uganda each and every day. We got to find a way to give that country back to the Ugandan people, and those of us who have the knowledge to help the country move forward, we have to help the country move forward. Not any group of people, not the North, not the South, not the East or the West, not any tribal group or any other form of what's going on in Uganda, because one of the things that we understand and we know, those of you who are in the diaspora, you have lived in communities where you understand true democracy. So we can honestly say that you are the chosen ones. Why did God spare your life? Why did God give you the opportunity to leave the soil of Uganda and to start your life over in another place? Why did God handpick those of you? And you have been handpicked. Call it God, call it whatever you want, whatever the higher power or the higher source is that you believe in. You were hand chosen for such a time as this. And if I cannot get you to believe anything else in the diaspora, I have to get you to believe that. There is a purpose and there is a reason why you are where you are at today, why you have studied, why you have learned, and why you have grown. You understand true democracy, and you have never disconnected yourself from your country of birth, your country of origin. But yet you have gone into another society and you have lived and you have grown and you have understood and you have learned. You have had access to the media on all platforms for other countries and how those countries are developing and how those countries are moving forward, how legislation, how the law works. You have been educated like slaves were educated to be able to be slaves in the house of masters and not in the field. And those are the people that liberated and moved slavery forward. Those are the people that liberated and became educated and started schools and taught other blacks to read and to write. They were not intimidated by, if I teach another black to read or write or understand money or understand the movement forward. They were not intimidated by the fact that they would someday uprise and become better and greater than them. They did not do that. They knew that the more blacks were educated and understood, the more they would be able to move forward and compete. So why do we have the fight of fear? It's fear. But why is that fight still raging in the hearts of Ugandans? When are we going to lose and when are we going to give that up and know that that is a losing battle? That the fight is not amongst one another's, but the fight is against a man who has dictated the way in which the country will be ran and the way in which the Ugandan people will move forward. As long as this president can continue you fighting each other, his work is done. He doesn't have to do anything but keep you in line every now and then to do what he wants you to do. When are you going to stop fighting each other and realize the fight is against one man who has dictated you for far, far too long? I hate to bring this back into the fold of things, but we have to go back and look at the South Sudanese who made the comment about Ugandans just recently here in the media, that Ugandans are like sheep. I shared with you, and those of you who were not privileged to be a part of the program, it was on Christmas Day, I think it was, that we did that program. I talked about the obedience of what happens with a sheep herder. When certain sheep are born as infants, they break those sheep's legs, and they put the sheep herder puts that sheep around his neck, and for 1 year he loves that sheep. He sings to that sheep. He talks to that sheep. The sheep understands his tones. The sheep understands his commands. And that sheep, even when its legs heal, which those legs heal very quickly, he still carries that sheep around his neck for 1 year. And that sheep is loved, and he knows that he's loved. And he will do anything, and he will follow this sheep herder anywhere that he wants him to go. and he will do, and he will listen to the sheep herder's commands. Now, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. But it's not a beautiful story when you think about this is the way in which this sitting president in his dictatorship treats the people of Uganda. And they have known nothing but his voice. They have known nothing but his ways. They have known nothing but the ways in which he will lead them forward. And they're obedient to that. I don't want to think of Ugandans as in that capacity, but the only reason we're using this analogy is to help not only those of you who are in the diaspora, but those who are still in the walls of Uganda to understand that this has happened to them innocently over a period of time, and they have become very, very obedient to that. And those of us who have been handpicked by a higher power to be outside of Uganda, to learn, to grow, to study, to mature into what we have become, we understand this, we see this, and we know that this is happening to the Ugandan people. And it's up to us to educate them. It's up to us to go back in now and to help them. Because they have only embraced what they have been taught and what they know. They haven't been taught, and they don't know anything other than what it is that they're embracing. So how do we go back in, as we did through slavery in the United States of America, to teach them and to bring them forward with the rest of them? Because can I say this? When I say we need to look back into Uganda with eyes of compassion do not judge. Eyes of compassion do not look down upon people. It does not ridicule them. It does not make them feel like they're less than. And it just does not fault find. Eyes of compassion says, we have a group of people in Uganda who are still going to college, even though they don't know what the outcome is going to be. But they know that someday their education is going to pay off. So regardless of what the president continues to do to hold them back, they continue to go to the universities to educate themselves. Parents still feel the need to educate their children and send them to school because they know that a day is coming when they will need to be a part of a growing economy, a growing of people for change. Those of you who are in the diaspora on the outside of Uganda understand and know that because these people are still educating themselves, because your family members and your loved ones are still doing this, that we've got to have eyes of compassion as to how we go back in to help the people of Uganda liberate themselves back into wholeness. And you can do this. You do have the power to do that. We can no longer judge the people where they're at, but we've got to understand and know that we are to go back in to help to move them forward. You have been handpicked for such a time as this. The time of looking at yourself and putting yourself above others is over. You can no longer do that, and you can no longer look at yourself in that way. And I encourage you and I challenge you here in 2014 to be the voice of change in Uganda, to have the heart of compassion, to see the people of Uganda moving forward and what role you will play in moving them forward. It seems like a big challenge right now. It seems like a big obstacle to move forward in, but I tell you, it can be done. Nelson Mandela did it in South Africa. Gandhi did it in India, and we did it here in the United States of America. So you cannot look at the big picture, but you have to look at the small picture of where we are now, and we continue to move forward. Any of you understand and know that any great piece of artwork, it starts in the mind of the artist, and one stroke at a time, he adds color after color after color until he makes that masterpiece into the creation in which he wants it to be. And when he's done, people stand back and marvel at the greatness of this artist and what he did. Just like people stand back and marvel at the United States of America, South Africa and how they moved themselves forward, Gandhi and what he did for the Indian people. But that started out small, one step at a time, one brush stroke at a time. It was not something that just came to be overnight. It was years and years of something that developed into something great because everybody stood for the same cause and the same purpose in moving the country forward. And more people got on board to support that. And that's what we ask for you in the diaspora right now, your support for FADU and your support for Voice of Uganda Radio, through calling in and being a part of the conversation or donating. And let this be 2014, a year that you do that. Now, we have talked time and time again here on Voice of Uganda Radio about satellite radio and the importance of taking that into Uganda. Yet we continue to have to plead with those of you in the diaspora and those of you who listen and are part of Voice of Uganda Radio that this is the direction that we need to go. So I ask you, if you have been handpicked by God himself or whatever your higher power is to be where you're at, then you have to ask yourself, what are you doing with the gift that you've been given? Are you using it and being selfish with it? Are you using it to move a country forward? Do you not understand and know that you have been picked for greatness? And what are you doing to be a part of that, to connect, to move the country forward? To be a part of the new Uganda as we form it and move it forward for the Ugandan people. Uganda cannot be ran just by a president who thinks that he has all the answers for the way the people need to be treated. America is not ran by its government. It's ran by the people who support the government in helping to make decisions as to the way in which the country needs to move forward. That has been taken completely out of the hands of the Ugandan people. It all has been taken out of the hands of those of you who are in the diaspora. And we sit back week after week after week and we allow this to continue to happen, not only to the people of Uganda who are still in the walls of Uganda, but those of you who are in the diaspora. Because as I've said time and time again on the American Connection, you may not be affected today, but you will eventually be affected by the changes that this man continues to make in the government. He will take away little by little and slowly everything that you know and you love about the Uganda that you grew up in. If you continue to bicker amongst one another and we got to get the fear out of our hearts so that we can move forward united. We can no longer say, as I just stated earlier in the program, what is in this for me and how is change going to affect my people? We've got to look at ourselves as one and stop looking at ourselves as individuals. Because as long as we see ourselves as individuals in a country, we will never be able to move that country forward, and no one will ever find the need to do anything other than call into the programs and bicker and complain about what we need to do or how we have been treated. In 2014, I encourage all of you, whether you're inside the walls of Uganda or outside the walls of Uganda, even those of us who are Americans and the American platform that's being built here in the United States of America, we have to look on the Ugandan people with hearts and eyes of compassion. And you have to start seeing each other that way with eyes of hearts, with compassion. Because can I tell you this, the American people, when we look at the Ugandan people and the struggle and what's going on right now, we don't see you guys as individuals. That's not the way the American people see you. And that's not the way the American people see your struggle. We look at you as a nation of people who are mourning, who need help out of the dictatorship in which you are in. We see you all as equals, being treated the same way. When they tear gas someone, and we see the pictures through the videos of people getting beaten in Uganda, the tear gassing in Uganda, the safe houses in Uganda, American people are not saying which tribe is he from, who are his people, where is he from. We don't look at you guys the way you look at yourselves. We look at you guys as a unity of people that are being hurt in a dictatorship that cares nothing for its people, but only for its rules and its policies and what it can do to better itself and make itself stronger. No one that sends me emails on behalf of the Ugandan people are saying, well, now which area is he from that they're doing this to him? Or is this just a group of people from a certain region? We don't see you guys that way. And what I need and what I'm challenging the Ugandan people today is to see yourselves in the eyes of the world. even those of you that are in the UK, all throughout Europe and Asia, through Japan, through Germany, Australia, Canada, the United States of America, everywhere throughout the international community and the global world, we see what is happening to the Ugandan people as it's happening to the Ugandan people. Please, in 2014, start to see yourselves the way the rest of the world sees you. And drop the labels that you wear around your neck. Drop the labels that you carry about the pride of who you are in Uganda. And see yourselves as a people struggling to move forward. Because that's the way FADU sees you. The Federal Alliance of Democracy and Development in Uganda, every platform that we're building for you here in the United States of America, everything that we're starting to do to move forward in 2014, and the way that we are talking about you on the platforms in which we're trying to build up this to make it the grandness that it can be here, so that the American people will start to embrace it as a way in which to embrace the Ugandan people. We're talking about Uganda. We're not talking about the labels and the badges that you put on yourselves as the greatness of people of who you are, because that's not the way we see you. And I encourage and challenge you to start seeing yourselves in those same ways. We love Uganda as a whole. We don't see and we don't divide you out in any way, shape, or form. The struggle and the fight in Uganda is amongst yourselves. And that has to stop in 2014. And somewhere, in some way, you have got to hold on to, and you've got to trust in the fact that something has to happen. What happens after that, you've got to separate yourselves away from it. Otherwise, it'll eat you alive. It'll eat at your heart, and it'll eat at your mind. It'll eat at your soul and your spirit daily. One of the things I've noticed, even in performing a FADU, through other people who have inquired or started to ask questions about the movement of FADU, people want to be in positions of leadership. They don't want to be in positions of a wholeness of what can move people forward. And those people have dwindled away because that's not what FADU is about. We don't want you to become a member of FADU because of you can lead it forward or you know what's best. The members of FADU that are here and fighting each and every day and struggling on behalf of the Ugandan people, the membership and the platform that has been set up in FADU is for the people of Uganda and for no other reason. And for no other reason. If you are here on behalf of the Ugandan people and moving them forward and giving them their rights and their justice and their liberties, helping them to rebuild their country, then that's what FADU is about. FADU is not about what you can do to be a great leader. That's not what FADU is about. FADU is established and set up for the Ugandan people, to move the people of Uganda forward. The NAACP here in the United States of America was set up for that purpose. It wasn't set up to see who could be the greatest leader in the United States of America to move the African Americans forward. Because in the United States of America, there was one of the things that the NAACP understood is that there were great leaders already in place. Through Dr. King, through Rosa Parks, through Malcolm X and some of the things he did, through a lot of great leaders that sat on different boards. Because the civil rights movement was not just about Dr. King and what they were fighting for. There were 6 other groups that were a part of that march who were all great leaders within their own right. Thurgood Marshall, who went on to be one of the greatest men to help litigate and write some of the greatest laws that have stood on the behalf of African Americans in this country, was a part of those groups that went through. and so many others that sit in seats of Congress now. They sit and they're lawmakers on how the platform moves forward. So the NAACP understood and knew that and embraced all those people where they were and what they had to contribute to the movement and to the United States of America. So the NAACP didn't come up to say, we're going to be the leader, we're going to be the ruler, we're going to make all the right things happen for African Americans in America. NAACP established and set itself up to say, we will make sure that the laws are followed for the African American people. We will make sure that the government stands firm in laws and rules that was set aside for African Americans. That we could rewrite those laws, that when there was injustice, it stood up for the African American people. When there were injustices, people complained to the NAACP, and the NAACP built a platform to say, let's go to Congress on behalf of this. Let's go to the lawmakers in that state on behalf of this. Let's see why they're doing this and how the law pertains to what they're doing. So you understand the NAACP stood as a platform for change and equality and justice for African Americans. That is what FADU stands for, the Federal Alliance for Democracy and Development in Uganda. It stands on the platform of how we move the Ugandan people forward. If the Human Rights Committee in Uganda is not standing up for the human rights of Uganda, FADU stands up for the human rights to make sure they're filing the complaints, they're following them through, and that it needs to be filed out with the international criminal courts if that be what needs to happen. It's filed with groups here in the United States of America that can look at those issues and say, is the rights of the Ugandan people being sought or not? It also works with the legal system in Uganda to say, put some lawyers on this, fight for these people. Let's rewrite the laws so that it doesn't happen again, or that it protects the people of Uganda, or that it moves the people of Uganda forward. There has to be a platform to lead into the newness of the regime of what needs to protect the people. That is the stance that FADU makes. We are here on the behalf of the Ugandan people, whether you're in the diaspora or whether you're in Uganda, because those of you in the diaspora may be fighting for your rights of land that has been taken from your family, or things that need to come to a bigger attention of how the laws need to be reworded to protect you. This is what FADU wants to do for the Ugandan people, to make and bring back a wholeness, to make and bring back something. Because right now the Ugandan people have nothing to look forward to as far as justice. Who's standing on the side of justice for the Ugandan people? Who's standing on the side of justice as to a bigger platform to say, not only do we need to look into this, but how does the Constitution work in this? How do the laws that have been set up in Uganda work and protect the people? And how do we better go for reform to change these laws or revamp these laws to work on behalf of the Ugandan people? Because this is the platform that has to be established there in Uganda to give the people what they need, something that will be a safe haven. Because there are no safeties in Uganda right now. The people have no safety. There is nothing that they can hold on to. There's nothing that they can embrace that will move them forward in a great and a positive way for change in Uganda. We're going to take a few-minute break here, and then we'll come back with the second half of the program, which we will be down to the last hour of the program. So I encourage any of you who might want to call in and be a part of the conversation. Feel free to do so at the second half of the program. But we'll come back and we'll continue on where we left off here. I am Miss Brenda, and you are listening to Freedom at Hand here on Voice of Uganda Radio. And we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
munene tunda gwabawadde mulirwewo olundi okukufuna ate musajja omunyomya wamwenga bulijjo nzize n'ebyamasavu mbawe bulyeko twetamira olw'ensobi ekoleddwa ey'obutasoboka balamusaako songa empisa e Buganda zetugamba omuntu omugunjufu osooka kulamusa era te bantu bange musula mutya Katonda lugaba akyabakuuma nange muzadde mbadde emirembe n'omutwe ekyayiyaye ndimaladdi Katonda eyakola nze yankola nnyo naddira omutuuko n'aguwumba ndowooza yamala omwaka mulamba ku mutwe ogumuguti okubanga atonda obwongo bwa Katonda bukola nnyo yampakiramu mutwe ebirungo ku maaso nannyima obulungi bwamma kuba yakiraba yiina ensonga musaddemba mulungi atunulwako nennyongerako omutwe okuyiiya gavumentirizaamu bwe kyandibadde singa kakati kyatunulwako ebitakasala ekooti n'embivaako kati bannayuganda asaba mutuule bitayitako okukombizibu byaffe nga batuyiiya amagezi okubigonjoola ngera nninda kubali ewala eri abakadde n'abato mwenna mbagamba nti tereera wamu n'okutuuka nnyo mala okuva wano nnyanja ensonga kubanga gye nazaalirwamu singa siba mwaka gukubange ensegulire ekibawamma fate ensi eno ddebe erivaayo ey'omuddulu wansi gye wagamidde ku bantu abayina endowooza yammwe ekitowete n'ensi eri wansi abantu bakuno kyembalabyeko bo tebalowooza ku kirijja n'ekyemabega twerabira mangu tufa ku kino kyokka ekiriwo kyokka ensi eno ebonyebonye nnyo wano emirembe twali twagivaako katulimu otala ekiseera kyonna ng'emmundu yeefuka obulamu bwaffe batwabonabona ekiyingiridde abantu ebulemesi batufaako mukuliika entalo baganda bange singa teziddo bakyandisinze kizibu kye tulinkani akitegeera wano ebyobufuzi birwafuwasa mukomye omulukuba abafuzi baffe mutuusottanako ebyo bimugaya ensi yafuna byobwetwaze munkaaga mu ebirimba jjukizaamu nga neyasooka bwopulezidenti Ssekabaka Mutiisa Edward Tunafuga y'emyaka gyali mwena mukaaga mu mukaaga naggibwako nga neeyamujja kusimulala nnyo Militoni Obote si oyo wamma Obote Bebeko bwagirinnyako Buganda yatta mu tabanguka ate emyaka 5 paka luno gy'omu 7 bamuwamba Obote yamujjako mposi yalyani Idyamini tebalowooza ensi Uganda yajaganya olunaku Obote lwe bamuwamba olowooza lwaki bajajanja akisuubira nti bawonyeeko omanyiko Obote kaali kakambwe ng'omutima gwako gwonna mutemunyo njagala mpite yive mufuuze wamma kati kansambeeko nfune ku byennywa sooka onninde mala okuwera kyokka enkumalire Yesu bwetawaanye obufuzi Amini emyaka yafuka 8 mu 7 ne bamuwamba mwebase nnyo Mukama baganda bange entalo okulwanyibwa nga zibakuuka Amini yali musajja mbegete nnyo eyamuwamba teyajja bwomu baali bangikonga bawera bamala kwegatta basajja battu kwetera n'okoko owulidde Ukraine alakolo n'emuwamba mwebase nnyo Mukama baganda bange okutuusa kati nga mukyali kunsi ekibiina kyenjokedde waggulu eri kyawamattuka Tanzania eri ng'eyo waliyo pulezidenti Julius Nyerere yafalumu lule bwali wano obwa pulezidenti oyo mu ngeri esesa ne bamuwamba ani yamanyaka nti mwerabidde kamala okuweramu mubategeeze Mfoma Minayiso w'emutundwe yajjako luleeka mu nyumyengo yerula emyezi yafuweyo 8 bwe bwali basebo si byakulimba tayite yasala ne bamuwamba kati awe yaddako yali muwanga n'ateekawo obulungu bw'ekinaana munaasonyibwa mu bbaze emabega bw'ekinaana wali akavuyo obululu bwabbibwa si bwakulimba naye mwefulukuta abafuzi baffe bagambye ottanako ebyo byemugwayo kata yatufuba obubi ennyo emabega eri okukakana emugazaako emyaka 5 omuganda wange gyonna ffulu nga kafuga n'atuula mu ntebe ng'akaziyeemu era ddala pulezidenti wansi ng'abafako n'abajeera n'abajajanja nga bajajanja tuli abalamu Mukama n'atutaasa ng'ajja atusembeza ati ku mirembe tutookera okutwa naye n'avaayo nawamba Obote ne tubona waliwo mbuuze yajjako lutwa temuyomba muleke embanguyizaako yono minisita yowe pulezidenti ono 7 kagutani apakanyamu njagala mulowooza nnyo byennyumiza emyaka 28 gyempezeza irisoba kigaana olwaleero tinaye bw'alivaako tujajaja kwekamba n'olaba akakolwamma nga kateze ekifuba akasinga ku mbwa anti kukalinganga kasange kafuirya zirwana okukola obuliri muzeeyi kavuta nga sikulimbye ku byokoze luweera omusikusembye naye nga wabuleera atangaza akyusa mboolonda bwe bakuswaza ababa bakooti abayita banno beegendereza emyaka egisigadde katokyatufuka pulezidenti olijjo nnoonya obbatulukiriza emirembe engalo nkujjukizaamu tulinzeeko kukolwe kunaavaako wojjo otegeerera Museveni ti wano mu Buganda tewali munno ebyange bwe bityo nzize bulemezi kenkutte mu ddene kati nzizeeyo ewaffe sikuno nakaseke eryekyalo nakaseeta ati mumanyiyo mweraba.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for the second half of Freedom at Hand here. You are listening to Voice of Uganda Radio, and I am your host, Miss Brenda, and welcome back to the second part of the program. We were talking just before we went on break about, fear, and when fear becomes your way of life, it can control everything about the way we think and feel. Psychologists have studied the brain for many, many years, and the brain is an amazing thing because even though it can be taught fear, it can also be taught the proper way of coming through that and being. Even though atrocities and things may happen to you in your life that can overwhelm us sometimes, the brain is amazing as to its capabilities of healing itself, because that's what is happening here. I mean, if you honestly think about it, from what we've been talking about, mind, body, soul, and spirit, it's a healing that takes place. What we've been talking about with compassion and seeing each other through eyes of compassion, it's a healing that has to take place. And where the healing comes in is first we have to deal with what angers us, what frustrates us, what is hard about the situation for us. Then we can heal from it and move forward. Because until you deal with something head on, you're never going to be able to face it and move forward. And we know that with everything. And let's just take for an example someone who's an alcoholic. When they go to recovery to stop drinking, there's a lot that they have to come to grips with and a lot that they're faced with in order to be able to heal through it. And until they reach those stages in their life, they're never able to heal and move forward. And that's what's happening in the hearts and the minds of the Ugandan people, too. I think we have to start loving each other and forgiving each other for the past so that we can continue to move forward. And loving and forgiving each other, start small. Start wherever you have to. But then take it to a broader perspective and look at other areas and other tribes and other things going on, because can I tell you, for me as an American looking into the heart of Africa, no matter where I am at, whether it's north, south, east, west, central, no matter where I'm at on the scale of a geographical map of Uganda, there is suffering everywhere. There's suffering everywhere. And when you look at that suffering that is happening everywhere, you could say that there's favoritism in certain areas. There may be favoritism in certain areas, but there's only favoritism with certain people in certain areas. So still, people are suffering everywhere. Everywhere, people are suffering. So that's where our hearts need to go, and that's where we need to start to have compassion about for all the people who are just like us suffering. Because we have to take our minds off of what Parliament's doing, what Parliament's being given, how the president's walking around with bags of money, and all the things that are happening. We got to take our mind off of that, because that paralyzes us where we're at in our anger and in our fear. So let's shift our energy, let's shift our focus on the people and the suffering that's taking place in Uganda. Because when you focus in on the suffering of the people of Uganda, your anger takes on a different face. Your anger takes on a different meaning. Your anger fuels something in you that brings about change. to move you forward in another direction. Just really think about that for a second, because what I'm challenging you to do will make you better, not worse. Because for 27 years, my fellow Ugandans, for 27 years, we have been focused on this man, his regime, all the atrocities, all the killings, all the beatings, and the things that he continued to do. And those things frustrate you, they anger you, and they paralyze you. They paralyze you in anger and fear and frustration. And what happens when you're paralyzed? You can't move forward to help anyone or anything. You can't even move forward to help yourself. And if you can't help yourself at the end of the day, then you're really in trouble. We know that has gotten you nowhere. We know that it has gotten us nowhere to focus in on those things. So just try it. Let's start out this year focusing in that direction. Focus in on what is happening to the country, how the people are being treated, the hospitals, people who are suffering and dying for no reason at all, medications that have come into that country that haven't been given to the people. Focus on yourselves as people collectively as a whole. Focus on what is happening as a whole to the country, not through the political arena, but just in general as a people. When you can't feed your family that night, and have compassion on the other families in Uganda that can't feed their families that night. When someone is sick in your family and you can't afford to take them to the doctor, think and have compassion on the other people that can't do the same thing you can't do. Don't get angry and say, well, I don't know why I can't do this, or I want to take them and I don't know why anybody's helping me. Start to trigger your focus on, this is not only happening to me, but this is happening to my brothers and sisters. This is happening to other people in the country too. And if it's happening to other people in the country, then what am I going to do to connect with those people to make a change? That has to be your focus. Then you shift your compassion in another direction, and you start to have compassion. Because I don't think the compassion that people have in Uganda right now, I don't think they understand compassion. I think sometimes, just like I think compassion has taken on a different name and a different way of viewing and seeing things. True compassion, when you look at people from a place of compassion, it touches and it pierces your heart. It touches and it pierces your soul. Who have you looked at with those type of eyes in Uganda that it sends chills through your body because you hurt for that person? That's compassion. When you can see someone begging on the side of the road and in your mind you have compassion and you know what that feels like. Because when you connect with someone on a level like that, you fuel that energy in a different direction, where you start to collectively start to work together and realize what this president is doing. He is not just doing it to me. He's doing it to all of us. And we are allowing this to happen. And we are allowing him to have this control. I've told those of you in the diaspora time and time again that eventually he will take control of what happens in the diaspora as well. He doesn't have it now because we are in a democracy that works, protects, and provides for us. But what he will do is he will take away whatever it is that connects you to Uganda, your birth country. He will take that away from you. And what I'm saying to those of you who are in the diaspora or wherever you may be, the borders of Uganda they no longer stop at the border of Uganda. The border of Uganda stretches out to wherever we are collectively in the international community. Whether you are in throughout Europe, Asia, America, Canada, Australia, Japan, Germany, the Netherlands, wherever you may be, the border stops where you are, because you are still very connected and very vital and very much a part of that country and what happens in that country. Otherwise, you would not be a part of programs like Voice of Uganda Radio. You would not be a part of Badu and how it's starting to move forward. The media, the newspapers, Ugandans outside of the country read that stuff more than those who are inside the country. And we understand and we know what's happening in the country, and we're making a stance. And we have to continue to do that. So the borders of Uganda they don't stop there. The borders of Uganda stop wherever you are, because you are still a part of Uganda. And we have to continue to go in and look at how Uganda works, not only for those of you who are inside the walls of Uganda, but how it works for those of us who are outside the walls of Uganda as well. What do we want? How do we want the country to move forward? What do we want to see take place? How do we want to be a part of the growth and the change and the movement forward? We can file our petitions. File your petitions. Purdue is setting up a platform that you file your petitions on behalf of Purdue and allow us to go and fight on behalf of you and the Ugandan people. Because if you're hurting and you have compassion about something that's happening, there are other people that feel the same way that you do. We have to build this platform. This platform has to protect all of us, not just those who are inside the walls, but those who are outside. And I tell you why, for those of you who are on the outside, because the United States government has already said and understand and know the powerhouse of Uganda lies on the outside of the walls of Uganda, because they know that it is time for the United States of America to start working with Ugandans in the diaspora to build up an economic front on the outside that can penetrate into the heart of Uganda and start to make it work for everyone. So if you think you don't have power to change, you need to go and look in the mirror this morning, because you, every one of us as individuals, have the power to change that country and what is happening in it. The United States of America has already got on board. They have already done the numbers to show the billions of dollars that flood into Uganda a year to your loved ones and your family. Now, if those billions of dollars did not float into Uganda out of those of you who are in the diaspora, the economy of Uganda would not even be where it is today. The economy of Uganda rides on the shoulders of each and every one of you that are in the diaspora. Without your money and without your funds, the country would collapse in a matter of days. So if you don't think you have the power to change, I urge you to think about that again, because it's not what one individual is doing in the diaspora to send money forward to Uganda. It's what hundreds and thousands of Ugandans are doing to send money forward to Uganda that's making the difference. This is the same thing we're telling you here on this platform. This is the same thing I'm telling you here with Freedom at Hand. One person is not going to make the change. But as we collectively think and restructure our mindsets and rechannel our anger to what we see around us, that is what's going to fuel us forward. That, my fellow friends and my fellow Ugandan family, is what is going to fuel us forward. This man lives off of your hard-earned and worked for dollars or euros or whatever the currency is wherever you're at. He lives because we're not just taking care of our families, but we're still taking care of the government to a sense. Now, the same government that you're angry about the way in which it filters the monies that are used there in Uganda, they're using your monies and your funds as well, because you are funding Uganda as a whole. And doesn't that make you a little angry? It does me, because most of us would like to think that when we work and we earn money, we'd like to think that the way in which we use and spend our fundings, we have control of that. But when you send money to Uganda, you have no control. The only control you have is the monies that your family get and what they do with that. What the government gets to keep for themselves and the percentages and what they make off of the money that goes in there, it's continuing to fuel the fire. It gives this sitting president the money to buy the things that he needs to buy to keep the Ugandan people at bay. And that is not what you would use your money to fund. So we've got to shift the way in which we look at things. We've got to shift the way in which things work. I know and I understand politically, the political force in Uganda right now is not what it should be and not what it needs to be, and it does not work for the Ugandan people. We all understand and we know that. But please don't let that paralyze us in the way that we think, in the way that we feel. Because we know from the areas in which we live true democracy and how true democracy works. And we understand and we know that we can take this to Uganda. I think about people in the diaspora a lot when I'm putting together some of my shows for Voice Uganda Radio. I think about the power that they have that they don't even realize. I think about all the things that we've said and the encouraging words that we've brought forth to help them understand that, and they still don't understand it. I think about how they don't realize that a small amount of a contribution to Voice Uganda Radio could put satellite radio in Uganda in a matter of a month. We don't understand the power that we have because we're still living in fear. And that fear, we have got to get past it. Freedom does not come from fear. Freedom at Hand is here to tell you it's time to liberate and free ourselves. Freedom at Hand today is freeing of the minds of the Ugandan people so that we can move forward. There have been great people in the world, and if they lived in, I think the movement for change was fueled from fear, but that fear turned into a faith of what they could be and what they could change and how they could move forward. Fear cannot be the factor that we allow to drive us through 2014. And we've got to have the conversations about it because it is the paralyzing factor which holds us back. If you are afraid to do something, then find another way to do it, but do it. Don't allow the fear to control you and not allow you to do it. Voice of Uganda Radio, if you go out there and click on those tabs, you can actually mail money in. You can make a money order and then put that money order in an envelope. There's an address out there and send the money order in. If you are afraid, we have done everything and we pay a great deal of money a month to protect ourselves, to make sure that everything you do with us is protected. You have to trust in that and move forward in that. We cannot take the fear away from you in that. We can tell you what we've done to keep you safe, but at the end of the day, it's still your fear that traps you. And if you are afraid to do that, like I said, make a money order out. Go out there and get the address and just mail it in that way. You remain anonymous. Nothing can be traced from you. And we thank you very much, and we move forward from there. If we tell you that you are on a platform, because I understand, and I've had to talk to other people to find out what the thinking and why people are feeling the way that they're feeling. And I understand that from conversations I've had, that they've been hurt and anxieties and some other things that have happened through other giving and charitable things. But if you were running a race, if you were a runner and you trained to run, are you going to stop running because you lose your first race? If it were me, I'm going to train harder so that I can run better and better and be stronger so that the day comes when I do win the race and I get closer and closer to that goal. So as I challenge you, this is the thing that you need to think about. If you would not stop if you were running a race, why would you stop because someone has made you feel like you can no longer trust? I have a caller coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and take this caller, but we're going to continue on that frame of mind because I'm going somewhere with that. That it's very important that I make the point. Hi, caller. Are you there? Go ahead.
Good morning, Miss Brenda.
Good morning, Dorothy. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for such a beautiful program. Thank you a lot.
You're welcome. What would you like to say to contribute to the way the program's been going so far?
Miss Brenda, what can I say? I thank you again for the courage, because really that is what our problem is. Every single time we stop and we start fighting against each other. This has been said day in, day out, that let us focus, okay? Let us, if there's this big snake, if you have this huge serpent in the biggest saucepan in the house that you use to cook your food, what do? Unless you beat that snake, get it out of that saucepan, you will not cook and you will not eat.
Yes.
So we Ugandans, we are not going to go forward. We will not get it. You stated it the perfect way. You used the perfect analogy. You gave the perfect example. Okay? This is what I'm going to say for me. A little bit of what I have. As I was also listening to the program yesterday, I wasn't able to get, to engage in the conversation however much I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we cannot sit here and say that each tribe, because in Uganda, I have said this before, we have so many tribes, but for me this is a blessing, okay? We shouldn't, even our anxieties from the colonialists, from one dictator after another, they have divided us. And believe it or not, because the colonialists used this, okay, they used the minorities, armed them, did ABCD, in order to do whatever they wanted. So you can imagine we have so much hatred. And Museveni has done a good job of divide and rule. This is real. The fears are there. The anxieties are real. People are scared to death. But we have to find a way of working this out. Otherwise, we will not go anywhere, as you already stated. Okay? Now, for me, one thing that I worry about the most is like this. We cannot say that each and every tribe, they're going to have their own army. Of course, that will not work. But what I know for sure, and that has already been happened in Uganda, we had a federal system of government, and that worked, okay? Each region or each kingdom, they will need their regions. They will take care of those regions, they will collect the taxes, they will have their local police to take care of them. But the idea of army, even here in America, even in Minnesota, the army is taken care of by the central government, takes care of the army. We will figure that one out. But what we need to do right now is to figure out how do we get this man out of power and how do we get back our country. Another thing, how do we get this much power in the central government and bring it back to the people? That is the federal system. That's how we do it. Because even those organizations that are fighting, even the reason why you have had so many organizations, over 100, it is because each one, and most of them, people are looking for power. They are looking for that one chair. That's why Miss Brenda haven't gone anywhere. There is one chair. There is one chair. So to me, it is imperative to figure that one right away. How do we divide power? How do we take this power to the people? And stop this one man like himself who collects tax all over and works with the sacks of money, yeah? And have crippled the whole country. That one, we need to take care of it. But certain things we will figure out as we go. Right now, we need to figure out how do we get this money out. When we go back in our home, we will sit, we will have commissions, we will have experienced people like Miss Brenda and the others, so many others. Eh? They did it here in America before. Why can't we? So why do we limit ourselves and quarrel among us the smaller things, and we leave the big picture? So that's what I wanted to contribute, Mama Brenda.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, for the compassion of that, too. And, she's absolutely right. In what happened on the program yesterday and what a little bit of what Charlie's program was about, we have to start looking at ourselves as a whole. We can no longer continue to divide ourselves. Divide and rule does not work. If you think it works, look at what's happening to Uganda right now. It is a prime example of the fact that divide and rule does not work. We have to find a happy medium, and we have to move forward in that. Compassion, love. I mean, my fellow Ugandans, we're going back to the basics here. We're not bringing anything greater or something new forward. What I'm talking about today is just back to the basics. of how we move forward from here. The compassion has been the way. I mean, even if you think about Jesus, or whatever your religion may be, all religions lead to one path. Compassion.
I started going pro a few weeks ago.
It all leads us back to the same belief.
After my last dentist visit, I was
do
like,
not cause any harm to anyone that you would not want to be caused on yourself. And when you have a president who has separated himself from what it is his purpose should be for the people, then that is a president that I tell you no longer deserves the right to be where he's at. Because any president, if you look globally throughout the world, their love and compassion is for the people that they serve. They understand and they know that they were there to serve the people. One of the things that this president has forgotten completely is that he was put in that position to serve the Ugandan people. He no longer feels like he's there to serve anyone. He feels like he's there for his own criteria. And he separates himself from the fact that the very people that put him there are the very people that he should be helping and protecting. Yet these are the people that he causes so much pain and so much agony day in and day out. You know, when we look at the news and we look at the media and we read the newspapers and things that are going on, I think we need to start looking at the media and the news as a way of having spiritual compassion. Because what's happening to us is that we look and we read these things and we read it as if we're reading a book and we put it back on the shelf. We forget that what we're reading in the media and what we hear, these are human beings. These are individuals that are living, going through, and being treated in this way. So we've got to put compassion back into what we read. And we need to read the news, and we need to look at the media. And when there's videos out there, I mean, if you go out there on YouTube and you Google Uganda, oh my gosh, the things that people have put out there are heartbreaking. And we don't need to look at those things as another video that's been put out there. I mean, we really need to put ourselves in the place of these people. We really need to start to say, what if this was my mother? What if this was my sister? What if this was my brother? What if people were standing around watching someone stoned to death and that was my brother? I mean, we've got to start putting ourselves in the place of these people. If we separate ourselves out to say, whatever, oh, they deserved it or whatever, it puts a callousness into the situation. It puts a callousness over our heart, and then we remove ourselves from the feelings and the emotions of other people. And I think that's happened too much in Uganda. I think this sitting president feeds on that. I think any way that the sitting president who is in office right now in Uganda, anything that he can do to continue to make you hate one another, he will do it. Because at the end of the day, it's about how much he can make you hate each other, how much he can stay within your minds to control your minds, even though he's not in your presence each and every day. Because there is a way to control another person's mind without being in their presence. Fear does that. The fear of what would happen. And we have talked about it time and time again on most of these programs. A lot of what has happened to people in the media there in Uganda, this president has made that happen as an example. Let's just take, for example, the most recent thing with the fires that happened there in the marketplace. He did not have to be in the presence of the Ugandan people to put fear in the hearts of the Ugandan people. They knew who was responsible. And then when the people who he has put in place to come and help you, when all they do is put more control and fear in the minds of the people instead of helping the people, those type of things continue to feed into our psyche. And those of us who watch those fires, those of us who watch that and the hearts and the interviews of the people that went through that, it saddens me that some of the comments that came out of that. It saddened the American people because we saw that the people who had comments in some of the things that they had to say about the fires and some of the things they had to say about people, there was no compassion for what had just happened to those people. The youth live in a dictatorship of a government that does not show any remorse for anything. And the youth of Uganda are growing up with that same mentality. They show no remorse over anything. All they do is find a way to pick at or tear apart the situation. President Barack Obama has said it time and time again on trips overseas and here in the United States of America. He's talked about the demise of the African people. He's talked about the demise of the Ugandan people. That demise is the same thing that lays in the hearts and the minds of a lot of the youth and others who have had some of the comments that they have made about these people that lost everything in these fires. How can you not look at that situation and weep inside of yourself for what happened to these people? My fellow Ugandans, we've got to start learning to put ourselves in the shoes of other people. We've got to start having compassion for the things that we see. What if this happened to me? Everything you look at from now on, just do it for a week, do it for a month. What if this happened to me? Put yourself in that situation. And I guarantee you the compassion that comes back to you will teach you to start having compassion for those situations so that we can fuel our energy in another direction forward. Comments, the comments that were made during that are not even worth me spending the time on my show to share with you or to talk about. Because any comment that was made that did not bring about good, but was there to inflict harm, we need to stop using our energy on those things as well. Why do we want to use our energy to continue to fuel things that are an atrocity or something that has happened in a bad way, or something that was not meant to lift up people but to bring them down? We need to talk about it. We need to use our energy to help people focus their direction in a different way, and then we need to move forward from there. We cannot allow the mindset of the media, what we read and what we're exposed to determine that that's the way we feel also, or for us to even have an opinion. I tell you, in 2014, it's time to start looking at things through the eyes of compassion. Have compassion on those situations. Have compassion for what these people have lost. Think about you in the diaspora outside of the country, and I'm going to have Dorothy comment on this. Think about yourselves and where you are collectively in the world in this very moment. And if what you've been saving, the little bit of monies you have, the government falls and you lose everything. And the government doesn't even have you the money to give you back what you've lost. From what you have sitting in a bank account right now, you lose it. There's no insurance through the bank. There's nothing. What you had is absolutely gone. You don't know how you're going to eat. You don't know how you're going to pay your rent. You don't know how you're going to pay your bills. You don't know how you're going to send money to Uganda. You don't know how you're going to go to the doctor. You don't know anything, because every dime you have right now that is sitting in the bank disappears. And tomorrow morning you wake up and it's gone. What will you do? How will you feel? Do you expect the rest of us to have compassion on you for your loss? Or do you expect us to just go about our lives as if, oh, well, I'm sorry for them, but better them than me? I mean, what would you feel? I mean, you can think about the emotion of that right now, where your mindset would be in that. And then what if the next day in the newspaper you read about all these people belittling and talking about you and your money, and oh, they were crazy to have that much money in one bank, and oh, they shouldn't have done this and they shouldn't have done that, criticizing you instead of having compassion for you? I mean, really, because this is how you need to look at what's happening in Uganda right now. This is how you need to look at what happened to all those people in the marketplace. They woke up one morning, everything is on fire, and they were told they have nothing and they would never be able to get it back because nothing was put in place that would make them whole. So why would we not have compassion and even cry within ourselves for what these people have lost if we put ourselves in their shoes? This is a type of compassion that we have to start having for each other, not in a tribal, not in a geographical map of Uganda, but as a whole. Dorothy, comment on that, because I know you're a person in in this country that has plenty of money, and you know you can pay your bills, and you know you can eat, and you'll be able to take care of yourself until you get paid again. But what if that was all taken away from you, and why not? Why should that not be our mindset? Go ahead and comment on that for me, if you would.
You know, Miss Brenda, this is such a hard task ahead of us, ahead of me right now. But what can I say? First of all, for those who have been in that situation before, if you are anywhere, you know what that it means. But also, for some of us who believe, most of the time, people turn to be atheists, or turn away from God, or those who believe really start doubting when they face tragedies. Then they question things like Katrina, those big storms, tornadoes, okay? Then people ask you really bad, if you love us, where are you? Miss Brenda, in such situations, people turn away, and they're like, if you were there, then you don't care. If you cared, you would have done something, or I wouldn't have let this happen. But most of the time, for those who are strong in belief, such tragedies make them even hold on more. Then they trying to find the sense of suffering and make sense out of it, which is very, very, very hard. Because most of the time, the negative takes away the little hope, the little faith that you have. But if you find the solution or the reason to your suffering, then you become stronger. For me, Miss Brenda, I would say, if that happened to me, then I have to face the situation as it is. Then I have to learn. Then I'll start. I have no choice. I have no other choice. Right there and right then, I'm in the shoes of the people of Uganda, what they are in right now. Okay? You wake up, you had a house. You had land. Someone walks up and they say, hey, I want this. You either take this money or you don't take it. I want it. Either way, you are first of your home, or you had a garden, they bring all these trailers, machines, and they remove everything, your food as you know it. So from now on, I'm in those shoes and I have no choice. It is after it is all over and what I have gone through, then I learn. So if for us, most especially for us in the diaspora, if that happened to all Ugandans in the diaspora, then we would know maybe what the people of Uganda, they are going through right now. Because, Miss Brenda, this is an irony. Can you imagine? The people in Uganda, they have lost it, as we know. No compassion. It is much hatred. The man said that Ugandans, you are grasshoppers. I got you and I put you in a bottle. Okay? Instead of finding the man who did this to us, we behave like grasshoppers. We are biting each other's head off. And how is that helping us? Don't we need a plan to figure out how to get the hell out of this bottle?
Yes.
I think that's what we needed to do. But we are totally lost. So, for the tragedy, Miss Brenda, if that happens, I have to go through it and learn. Because I think people, they don't even want to think about this word compassion. They don't want to even come close to it. Okay? People, they think that, oh, they worked so hard, they left Uganda. They don't think they have a reason to be here. If you escape the wrath of Uganda, the wrath of Museveni right now, why don't we be compassionate? Unless we come together, we will not figure this out. Unless we have, unfortunately, there is no magic bullet, Miss Brenda, that we're going to wake up one morning, one of these days, these fears, these anxieties, this everything, they are all gone. No. What are we going to do? We need to put our fear aside. We need to love one another. Love, and care. Things have happened, unfortunately, that we need to take Museveni out of our country. We need to start all over. We together as Ugandans, as we know it. Because right now, if we start saying my people, my group, my head, everybody upset. You know, the man has not, when we are suffering, he did not discriminate with what group suffered and which group didn't. You know, that is the most obvious thing as we know it. So why are we starting dividing right now on which group will have what and which group will have what? until we unite and fight, then when Museveni is gone, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be a lot of fights. There are going to be a lot of talking. There are going to be a lot of sitting. There are going to be a lot of truth commissions. People who help us sort things out. Okay? I'm not saying it is great right now in Rwanda. You see, after the genocide, after these people who masterminds themselves and Kagame sit outside and planned, and the people chopped each other's head until the end of the world. But those people, it is not easy right there. But Rwanda has moved on somehow. Yes, some people are still suffering. Even those on the run who went to the camps, they found them out there and they killed them. But what I'm trying to say is that we cannot afford, or we cannot even stop running, as Ms. Brenda said, because you are worried what is, who will take what, who will do what. We need to keep going. We need to get Museveni out of Uganda, then we're going to figure certain things we want to talk about. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have these conversations, but also we need to be mindful not to be stuck here, not going forward because, hey, this is my group deserved this group did this group we will never get anywhere. So let us have an agenda. Let us do one thing at a time, and then we'll figure out.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Dorothy. And James is coming in now, so we're going to go ahead and take his phone call. Good morning, James. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
We are very good. Thank you so much for calling in and being a part of the conversation.
You're welcome. So I want to, first of all, to thank you very much for the good job you are doing. And I wanted to make some contribution.
Please go ahead, and thank you so very much.
So I had my sister, Dorothy, was talking about a snake.
Yes.
Which is somewhere in our house. And she told us we have to kill this snake if we want to use our house. She's right. But my sister, it is not only this snake in our house, but many of them, they are waiting. They are outside there, they are waiting. And they have been doing so. We kill one snake, another one comes in. And that is why we are asking ourselves, what is our mistake? We have to get the job done this time properly. Not killing a snake, and then we say, okay, we will settle those things later. No, we have to focus. We have to plan it ahead. Otherwise, we are not. We are just wasting our time. This job we have done it very many times. We removed the Amin, we removed the Obote, we removed the Okello, what have you? But things didn't change. What is our mistake? That is why we are asking ourselves, what are we, why are we not getting this equation clear? Why are we getting, what is the missing link? And that is why we are here. And if we start discussing about these things, we are not lost. Let us actually discuss about them. If I discuss about an Acholi, I'm not actually dividing people. This Acholi was there. God made Acholi, God made Uganda. We have to face it. I'm not the one who made Acholi. I'm not the one who made Uganda. God did it. He had a purpose. Why? And if we discuss about these things, we are not dividing. God divided us a long time ago before before I was born. But we have to face it. Let me give you a good example. This Mukasa told us he was in the army. was fighting with he was with Museveni. Those days, there were very many groups. One group of Museveni was in Luwero. Another group of Kahira was in Chagwe. Mind you, Kahira was in Uganda. And Museveni, as we know now, is a Rwandese. But guess what? What happened in Chagwe and what happened in Luwero? For me, I'm coming from Chagwe. I know what happened there. Even my father told me, they slept in their houses the whole time. There was no problem at all. No people were killed there. But why? In Luwero, they were killed. Very many of them. We have to ask questions. And we have to answer these questions. It is not dividing. This is the reality. In Chagwe, Kaira didn't kill his Baganda. In Luwero, Museveni killed Baganda because he was not coming from that area. And not only that, this Museveni sent Baganda, Banyarwanda, what have you, this Bahima, to run into Acholi. And people were killed there. Then we ask ourselves, what? When are we going to stop this? You are right, we have to use our mind. We have to use our brain. We have to think. We have to ask ourselves, when is this thing going to stop? And what are we going to do? Let me give you another example. One day, my mother was going to Mulago. She was sick. And there was a roadblock somewhere. And these guys who were on this roadblock, they didn't speak this language of my mother. And my mother was beaten because she couldn't speak Swahili. This nonsense I don't want. She lost 5 teeth because of this nonsense. I know it. And we say we don't want it. I want someone to be on the roadblock. This someone has to speak the language of that place. And that is, what is wrong with that? What is the actual, why? That means I am actually dividing the people? No, I am not dividing.
Yeah,
I want
James,
to stop this killing. Yes,
I understand. And James, let me just say this for the first part of what we've been talking about here on Freedom at Hand. There are many things that were wrong with that situation. First of all, your mother should have never been treated or beaten like that. So I am very sorry for that atrocity. But let's just say this. This is one of the things we're talking about at Freedom at Hand. Compassion for other people. There was no compassion for your mother on the side of that road that day. If we cannot look at each other with compassion, these are the things that are going to start to happen. This is what we're saying when you're saying use our brains and start to think in another direction. Because if your mother was in that situation and couldn't speak that language, somebody should have made an executive decision. This woman is harmless. She's not going to cause any problem to anyone. Let her go on. If they felt they needed to talk to her, communicate with her, then they needed to have a roster of people on board that they could call or talk to get the information they needed. There's a lot of breakdown in things that happen in Uganda, and no one is thinking about moving it forward. We can't just stay trapped in the anger of what happened there. We have to look at that situation, build upon it, and move forward. How do we make this situation better the next time so this doesn't happen to your mother or someone else's mother? And these are the problems that we're having in Uganda, and these are the things that we really have to start facing. Because the military does things like this all the time, even now, and we know that. It is not a crime not to know the language of another person. In the United States of America, in Greece, in Germany, in anywhere, that is not a crime. We mostly embrace the fact that we're different. We don't allow that to destroy us and to be to cast a doubt in our minds. I'm going to let Dorothy go ahead and comment on that. I'm going to give her a couple of minutes. I'll go back to you, James, and then I'll have to, unfortunately, close out the show. But Dorothy, go ahead and comment on what James was saying and how I fed into that, and then we'll go back to James for closing comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Brenda, and thank you very much, James, for coming in. First of all, because James mentioned me and what I had been talking about, I'm going to just be really quick here.
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
Yes. James, if you are listening, what I said, I did say no one was wrong. And I mentioned it 2 times that we need to talk about these things, but we need to be careful not to stuck where we are at. Okay?
Yes.
I understand we have so many snakes, but there is a big snake. So long as we move the big ones, okay, it is in somebody protecting everybody. Oh, those protesters and everything there, they will not be there. We'll find a way. We talked about feminism, and we know what to deal with that. Now, when I talked about many tribes, surely we have so many tribes. For me, I've been saying this as a blessing for Uganda. You can imagine this coming in mind. If we were 1, 2 tribes, we would be gone. But when he tried Achol, he came to Uganda, then he got to Busoga, he found different challenges. To me, God did that. It is not a division. I see it as a blessing. And that's why I say Uganda was created as a federal country from the beginning. It was there and it worked. When I said that we cannot have, each tribe cannot have an army, but I mentioned that we need a federal system of government. I also mentioned that the problem, as we see it right now, from Obote Amin, Museveni, and everybody, you know, everybody, even we, different groups who are trying to say that we are going to rescue Uganda, we cannot rescue it because we haven't rescued ourselves. You are the master of that when you told the story our mother told you. We cannot rescue others unless we are rescued. People, different groups are looking at that chair, that big chair in the middle. How do I get into that? That's why you cannot unite. That's why you cannot save Uganda. So that's when I said we need a federal system of government. We need to take that power from the central, from one man, from one chair, bring it back to the people. But my comment was about this army, okay? Even here in the United States, even there in Germany where you are, you told us what kind of federal government they have over there. Eh? But you can find that these armies are controlled by the central government. But this is where we need to sit and figure out things, how we do this, okay? We need to figure this out because I understand the Uganda military government has been a big factor into causing these atrocities, okay? Each man come to power, they own the army, they can do everything they want. Yet we need to look at it, okay? And I saw we need to divide the power. We need a federal government. I support you. If it is a police office, I want him in Uganda to be a Muganda. In northern Uganda, should be an Acholi and a Luo. Yes. But as we figure out those things, we cannot sit here and argue all day. We need to move forward. We need to talk about these things, but we need to move forward. And we need an agenda. What do we do first? That's what I said, Mr. Engineer. So thank you very much. I'm very much in support of federal, but we need to figure out how do we control our armies. How do we take that power out of the central? Yeah. So we need the unity to get there. We need the unity to get there. Thank you very much, Mr. Brenda.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, too. Thank you so much for your compassion in that. James, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes here, and then I have to close out the program. So go ahead and speak on what you wanted to finish up.
Thank you very much. Doris, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you one question. You want federal. Who is going to protect your federal? Who is going to protect it? Let me tell you one thing. I was in a meeting with Museveni here in Germany. He told us one thing. The one controlling the army is the one who has the key for the whole country. So my point is, this army thing is very, very critical. Very critical. You talked about Germany here. Yes, here Germany, it is not like in Uganda. Uganda, we have very many tribes. Here not. They speak the same language. But at the same time, each state has its own police. Not the army. There you are right. But we can't copy this federal to Uganda. We have to think twice. Uganda is not the same like Germany here. No, not at all. So we have to think about it. How are we going to use our army? Who is going to protect our federal? These questions we have to answer them. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you so much, James, for your comment and for keeping that brief for me. I appreciate that a lot. Let me just say this in closing, because I understand what Dorothy's saying, and I very well understand what James is saying as well. And to the comment that the sitting president made there, the person that controls the army controls. It's not who controls the army, but how they control the army. You have presidents throughout who have a large amount of control over the military, and they put people in place to make sure that his voice is the one that makes the final decision as to the way things are done. The mindset, the fear that this man has of losing his position and being overthrown or overtaken or a new regime coming in is real. And he will use that force in any way possible to make sure that these things don't happen to him. Many people control their armies, but you have to have compassion for your people in control of your army. So it's not a matter of it's a bad thing for people to have control of their army, because it's not. It's just that this sitting president has done such horrific things with that power that the stability of going forward with anybody else having that type of power, it paralyzes the Ugandan people again. I talked about it earlier in this program. We can no longer be paralyzed by the fear of others. We can no longer be paralyzed by what someone has done or the ways in which they have misused their power. We know throughout time, power has been misused by many, many people in the global world. But taking that power back and using it in a positive way for the people is what we are after, in the direction in which we're going. Hitler had a great amount of power and could have been a great person. He just used that power in the wrong way. When the international community, everyone got on board to finally realize we had to go in to fight to free the people there and to break down the barriers of what was happening with the misuse of that power, we didn't do it as to what will happen to the people after this. We did it saying, liberate the people and allow the people to vote and make decisions on how things run. Like Dorothy just said, the big chair is sitting there, and everybody's trying to determine how they're going to get into that big chair. We need to establish very early on that whoever goes in that big chair, that it will be established early on that they will only have maybe 2 years in that chair, and the people of Uganda have to vote, and maybe not even 2 years. Maybe they only need a year in that chair. As we set up a system in which the Ugandan people can vote for who they want in office. So let's establish first that the chair is there, but the chair is not going to ever be as permanent as it is now. That we have to start to establish that whoever gets in that chair has a small window. We don't give them the window that you guys have allowed them to have all of this, through all these other presidents and all these overthrown of the government. Put the power back in the hands of the Ugandan people is what we've talked about all the time. We're going to continue this conversation on freedom, on the American Connection on Wednesday. So make sure you tune in and be a part of the program Wednesday for the American Connection, where we're going to dive into this a little bit more and discuss it a little more. And those of you that have a chance to call in and be a part of that, I wish that you would, and do it earlier on, because, you know, as we get closer to the end of the program, we have to go because we have other programs behind us. Thank you so much to Dorothy, to James, to my callers today for being a part of the program and the discussion. I always appreciate being able to have the dialogue between each other. This is Miss Brenda, and you have been listening to Freedom at Hand this Sunday morning on Voice of Uganda Radio. Have a great rest of your Sunday. God bless you, and thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the program.